First of all, I met Richard Gere, and I don't know if you remember this, but
I was going to bring it up.
A woman named Elena stands alone inside a nearly abandoned movie theater in Madrid. The theater is fictional, but the feeling is real. It is past midnight. The velvet seats are faded. Dust hangs in the projector's beam like tiny stars that have forgotten where to fall. Elena is 72 years old, and tonight she has been told to clear the building before it is renovated. In a metal cabinet beneath decades of ticket stubs, she finds a folded poster from 1990. A red dress, a black tuxedo. Two faces the world instantly recognizes. Pretty Woman. Elena smiles, but then something strange happens. Instead of remembering the film, she remembers the night she first saw it. She was newly divorced. Her daughter was asleep at her sister's house. She had entered the cinema feeling that her life was over and left believing that perhaps people could still be surprised by love. She turns the poster over. On the back, someone had written a sentence in blue ink: "Do not confuse the role with the man." And that is where the real story of Richard Gere begins. Because for more than 40 years, millions of people believed they knew him. They knew the silver hair, the tailored suit, the quiet smile, the way he could enter a room on screen and make confidence look effortless. Hollywood sold him as the man who always had the answer. But behind that image was someone asking questions almost no movie star was expected to ask. What if fame is another kind of prison? What if the greatest role of your life is the one you refuse to play? And what if disappearing from the center of Hollywood is not a tragedy at all, but an escape? Stay with me, because the final chapter of Richard Gere's story does not take place under the lights of Los Angeles. It takes place far from the machinery that made him famous, where the man once presented as the ultimate fantasy seems to have found something Hollywood could never manufacture. Richard Tiffany Gere was born on August 31, 1949 in Philadelphia and raised in a large, ordinary family in upstate New York. His father, Homer, sold insurance. His mother, Doris, managed a busy home. There was no studio executive waiting at the dinner table, no family empire, no red carpet hidden in the future. There were chores, school, music, siblings, discipline, and the quiet expectation that a child should become useful before he became important. Young Richard was not only interested in acting. He played instruments, especially the trumpet, wrote music, and excelled in gymnastics. He earned a scholarship to the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where he studied philosophy, but the classroom could not contain the restless part of him. After roughly 2 years, he left college and stepped into the uncertainty of performance. It was not a glamorous decision. It was the kind of decision that terrifies parents because it replaces a road with a fog. Before the cameras, there was the stage. Before the expensive suits, there were dressing rooms with bad mirrors, borrowed confidence, and the smell of dust behind curtains. Gere worked in regional theater and eventually appeared in the London production of Grease in 1973, playing Danny Zuko years before John Travolta made the role inseparable from his own image. He later appeared in productions including Bent, a demanding play that proved he was interested in more than easy charm. Imagine him then. Not Richard Gere the simple. Richard Gere, the uncertain young actor. He is standing in the wings while another performer receives applause. He can hear the audience but cannot see their faces. His shirt sticks to his back. Someone whispers, "You're on." For 1 second, he considers every possible failure. Then he walks into the light. That moment, repeated night after night, taught him something Hollywood would later try to make him forget: applause is temporary. But the reason you step onto the stage has to survive after the room goes silent. His early film work began to attract attention in the late 1970s. In Looking for Mr. Goodbar, he appeared as a volatile figure at the edge of a dangerous world. Then came Days of Heaven, Terrence Malick's haunting drama, where landscapes seemed to speak as loudly as the actors. Gere's face belonged perfectly in that film, not because it was handsome, but because it could appear open and guarded at the same time. He looked like someone carrying a secret even when he said nothing. Then, in 1980, American Gigolo changed everything. The movie did not merely give Gere a starring role. It turned him into an image. His character, Julian Kay, moved through luxury with controlled precision, elegant clothes, expensive cars, carefully arranged surfaces. The camera did not simply observe him. It displayed him. Suddenly, Richard Gere was not being discussed only as an actor. He was being discussed as an object of desire. For a young performer, this should have felt like victory. Instead, it became a complicated bargain. The world rewards beauty while quietly punishing the person trapped inside it. Once an audience decides what you represent, every new role becomes a negotiation with that decision. Hollywood looked at Gere and saw a product: mystery, masculinity, danger, romance. But Gere had already begun looking elsewhere. In his 20s, he had explored Zen Buddhism. In 1978, during travels in Nepal and India, his interest deepened into a lasting connection with Tibetan Buddhism and eventually the Dalai Lama. While his public image was becoming more material, his private questions were becoming more spiritual. The contradiction is almost cinematic. On screen, he embodied possession. Off screen, he was studying detachment. Then came An Officer and a Gentleman in 1982. The role of Zach Mayo could easily have become another display of cool masculinity. Instead, Gere gave the character anger, shame, hunger, and fear. Zach wants to become a naval aviator, but beneath the uniform is a young man desperate to escape the emotional wreckage of his past. Louis Gossett Jr. as drill instructor breaks him down, not because he hates him, but because the story demands that Zach discover whether anything exists beneath his defenses. And then comes the scene people never forgot. The factory. The uniform. The music. Gere lifting Debra Winger into his arms as the workers cheer. It became one of the most iconic, romantic endings of the era. But look closer. The scene is not powerful because a handsome man rescues a woman. It is powerful because a man who spent the entire film running from emotional dependence finally allows himself to choose another human being. Audiences saw The Officer. They felt the wounded child. The film became a major commercial success and earned Gere a Golden Globe nomination, confirming that he was no longer simply a promising actor. He was a movie star. During the 1980s, Gere moved through films of varying success. Some strengthened his reputation, others arrived and disappeared. That is the part of a long career people often edit out. We remember the peaks and pretend the valley never existed. But a career is not a staircase. It is weather. Then a script arrived that Gere initially did not understand. The character was Edward Lewis, a wealthy corporate raider in a story that would become Pretty Woman. Gere later explained that he first saw Edward as little more than a suit. He did not believe there was enough of a person on the page. Director Gary Marshall asked him to help find the character. And Julia Roberts, already cast as Vivian, brought the energy that changed the decision. According to Gere's later recollection, Roberts even wrote a small note urging him to say yes. He said yes. And cinema changed around that answer. Pretty Woman was released in 1990, and the chemistry between Gere and Roberts made the story feel lighter than air. She was movement. He was stillness. She laughed with her whole body. He seemed to ration every emotion. Vivian did not simply fall in love with Edward. She disrupted him. She forced a man who treated companies as objects to confront a person he could not purchase without changing himself. The film became a phenomenon. Gere received another Golden Globe nomination. Roberts became one of the defining stars of her generation. Together, they created an image of romance that outlived the decade that produced it. But success at that level can freeze a human being in time. To millions, Richard Gere would always be Edward Lewis climbing a fire escape with flowers. The world did not want him to age. It wanted him preserved in a hotel suite, waiting beside a piano. Yet, real life does not respect the final frame. Gere married supermodel Cindy Crawford in 1991. Their relationship became a global fascination, two extraordinarily famous, extraordinarily photographed people attempting to build something private while the public treated them like a campaign. They divorced in 1995. It would be easy to turn that chapter into gossip. But gossip is the cheapest form of biography. What matters is the pattern beneath it, a man associated with perfect romance discovering, like everyone else, that real relationships do not follow screenplay structure. Gere kept working. Somersby, First Night, Primal Fear, Runaway Bride, Unfaithful, again and again, he played men whose polished exteriors concealed moral fractures, loneliness, fear, or regret. In Primal Fear, his confident attorney believes he controls the courtroom until the truth exposes his arrogance. In Unfaithful, his restrained husband becomes a container for jealousy and devastation. In Arbitrage, years later, he would play another wealthy man discovering that money can delay consequences but cannot erase them. This is why dismissing Richard Gere as merely a romantic lead misses the darkness running through his best performances. His characters often possess everything except peace. And that theme was becoming increasingly personal. In 1993, while presenting at the Academy Awards, Gere departed from the expected script and spoke about human rights in Tibet and China. The moment created controversy and contributed to a long period in which he was not invited back as a presenter, though later reporting clarified that the Academy never issued a formal ban. He returned to the Oscar stage in 2013. Think about the choice. The safest thing a star can do at an awards ceremony is smile, read the teleprompter, and protect access. Gere did the opposite. Whether viewers agreed with him or not, he revealed something Hollywood could no longer control. His fame was not his highest loyalty. That decision followed him. Ye has said his advocacy for Tibet complicated his relationship with major studio filmmaking as China became increasingly important to Hollywood's global business. The doors did not all close at once. That would have been easier to see. Instead, the room slowly changed. Large projects became less frequent. Independent films became more central. The industry that once treated his face as commercially irresistible began calculating the cost of his convictions. And here's the twist most stories get wrong. Richard Gere did not stop acting. Hollywood stopped placing him at the center of the same machine. Those are not the same thing. He continued giving layered performances in films such as The Hoax, The Hunting Party, Time Out of Mind, Arbitrage, Norman and O Canada. The budgets were often smaller. The characters were older, stranger, less protected by glamour. In Time Out of Mind, he played a homeless man wandering New York, almost invisible to the people around him. Gere also used the film to support practical efforts addressing homelessness. The movie stripped away the wardrobe, the status, and the fantasy until only a vulnerable human being remained. Perhaps that was the destination hidden inside American Gigolo all along. First, the world stared at his clothes. Decades later, he played a man the world refused to see. In 2002, Gere married actress and model Carrie Lowell. Their son Homer had been born in 2000. Fatherhood introduced a different measure of time. Movie careers are counted in openings, reviews, and awards. Parenthood is counted in breakfasts, school years, illnesses, arguments, and moments no camera records. Gere and Lowell later separated, and their divorce was finalized in 2016. Again, there was no perfect ending. There was only life continuing. But 2002 also brought one of the great professional reversals of his career. Chicago, for years, audiences had known Gere's restraint. Billy Flynn required performance in another sense, singing, dancing, smiling, manipulating, turning a courtroom into vaudeville. Gere drew on the musical skills and stage experience that existed long before Hollywood decided who he was supposed to be. He did not merely survive the role. He won the Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Musical or Comedy. The victory carried a quiet message. The young man who once played Danny Zuko in London had never disappeared. He had simply been hidden beneath 40 million close-ups. By then, Gere's humanitarian work had become inseparable from his public identity. Through the Gere Foundation and his work with organizations supporting Tibet, homelessness, and other humanitarian causes, he spent years using celebrity as a tool rather than treating it as a throne. That does not make him flawless. No public figure deserves mythology. But it does make his choices unusual in an industry built on self-preservation. Most stars use causes to strengthen their image. Gere repeatedly risked his image to strengthen a cause. Now return to Elena, our fictional projectionist in Madrid. She is still holding the Pretty Woman poster. Outside, delivery trucks move through streets beginning to wake. Somewhere in the city, a bakery turns on its lights. Somewhere, a child is asking for water. Somewhere, an older man who once represented Hollywood perfection is living an ordinary morning. In 2018, Gere married Spanish activist Alejandra Silva. They built a family that includes their young sons, and in 2024, they relocated to Spain. A move Gere described as a way of giving his wife time closer to her family, friends, and culture after years in his world. By 2025, he spoke publicly about feeling deeply happy in that new chapter. At 76, Richard Gere is not frozen in 1990. He is a husband, father, actor, activist, Buddhist practitioner, and an aging man confronting the same mystery everyone confronts: what remains when the identities that once protected us begin to fall away? His hair turned silver long ago. The face became lined. The industry changed. New stars inherited the billboards. The audience that once watched him from the back row grew older too. And perhaps that is why his story hits differently now. When we were young, we watched Pretty Woman and imagined being chosen. When we grew older, we understood that the harder task is choosing what kind of person to become. Gere's most important transformation was not from struggling actor to movie star. It was from image to intention. He learned that beauty fades, power rearranges itself, studios move on, marriages can end, applause disappears, and even the most famous face eventually becomes a memory in someone else's darkened theater. But compassion can be practiced after the premiere. Conviction can survive a closed door. Love can become less cinematic and more real. Before we reach the end, tell me in the comments which Richard Gere performance stayed with you the longest. Was it the wounded determination of an officer and a gentleman? The controlled romance of Pretty Woman? The theatrical confidence of Chicago? Or the devastating loyalty of Hachi, A Dog's Tale? Because Hachi reveals another truth about Gere's appeal. He was often most moving when he stopped trying to appear powerful. In that film, his bond with a dog becomes a story about devotion continuing beyond death. There is no clever seduction, no expensive transaction, no courtroom strategy. Only attachment, loss, and waiting. Audiences around the world cried because the film touched the fear beneath every relationship, that love may continue even after the person we love can no longer return. That same awareness of impermanence runs through Gere's spiritual life. Buddhism did not remove pain from his story. It gave him a language for living beside it. In recent years, he has continued supporting the Tibetan cause and helped bring attention to the Dalai Lama's message through the documentary Wisdom of Happiness. His commitment has lasted not for a publicity cycle, but for decades. In 2025, while attending celebrations connected to the Dalai Lama's 90th birthday, Gere described that work as a commitment extending across lifetimes. That is not the language of a man trying to win back the center of Hollywood. It is the language of someone who decided the center was never where meaning lived. Elena folds the poster carefully. The renovation crew will arrive in an hour. The old screen will be removed. The seats will be replaced. The projector that illuminated thousands of imaginary lives will be carried away through a side door. She considers taking the poster home, then changes her mind. Instead, she places it inside a glass frame near the entrance. Beneath it, she adds a small handwritten card. Some stars shine brightest after they leave the spotlight. The theater is fictional, but the choice is real. Richard Gere could have spent his life defending the image that made him famous. He could have softened every opinion, protected every invitation, chased every franchise, and treated aging as an enemy. Instead, his career became less predictable and, in many ways, more human. He lost the illusion of permanence. He gained the freedom to become more than the man in the suit, and maybe that is what happened to Richard Gere. He did not vanish. He stepped beyond the frame. The final scene is not Edward Lewis in a limousine. It is an older father in Madrid, surrounded by a family that knows him without the soundtrack. It is an activist still speaking about Tibet when the cameras have found newer faces. It is an actor willing to play frailty after an industry once paid him to embody control. It is a man who spent decades being watched and slowly learned how to look beyond himself. One day, every theater goes dark. Every poster curls at the edges. Every famous name is spoken less often. But if a performance helped someone survive a lonely night, if a public stand gave attention to people who had none, if a child remembers his father as kind, then perhaps the light did not disappear. Perhaps it simply moved. And somewhere, in a quiet cinema that exists only in this story, Alina switches off the projector. For 1 second, the screen becomes completely black. Then the morning sun enters through the open door.